Well, here we are at week 7. We're about halfway through the book, coming up on about halfway through the book. And Christian meets his first traveling companion, in a sense. And Christian and Faithful enter into a relationship walking on this journey together. And when Christian sees Faithful up ahead, it's just after a very difficult time. Remember, he's just gone through the valley of humiliation and then the valley of the shadow of death. And he sees Faithful up ahead, and it's really an interesting interaction because he calls out to Faithful, and Faithful doesn't want to stop. Faithful responds this way. He says, "No, I am fleeing for my life, and the avenger of blood is behind me." It's interesting illustration. There's all these little subtle things in this book, and Faithful is essentially saying, like, I'm moving forward in my faith. There's no going back. I'm not stopping for a moment even to wait for somebody to catch up. I'm still going. You need to catch up with me in the faith. It sounds selfish when we think in terms of walking a path, but when we think in terms of the spiritual life, it's true that we should not stop growing, should not stop progressing towards a deeper relationship with Christ. We should always be moving forward, and others should be rushing to catch up. And then we read this. Hearing this, Christian gathered his strength and ran with all his might in order to catch up with Faithful. Soon he had not only caught up with Faithful, but had run past him a little ways, so that the last became the first. And then I love this part. Then he turned and proudly smiled at Faithful, feeling smug about overtaking him. At that moment, Christian stumbled and fell to the ground with such force that it left him unable to rise to his feet until Faithful came and helped him up. Kind of an interesting illustration, and we can talk about that hopefully as amongst one another. But it's good for Christian to meet up with another traveler. We were not meant to walk this road alone. In fact, God's word says it's do not forsake the assembling of the brethren, right? We're supposed to be together. We're not meant to be alone. And as they journey together, Faithful tells Christian about his salvation experience and about his Christian walk, and he even goes into a little bit about what happened to Pliable after Pliable returned, which was kind of interesting. But it's interesting in the story that Faithful tells that Faithful meets a number of people that Christian hadn't met, and one of them was Moses. That Moses came up and beat Faithful because Faithful had almost gone Adam's way. Moses doesn't know how to show mercy to anyone who transgresses the law. But Faithful was saved by the Lord of the way. Moses, as he said, would have beaten him, and maybe even killed him, I think is what he talks about. But then Jesus, the Lord of the way, saves him, the one who bears the marks of the cross on him. And Christian asked if he's met anyone else along the way, and he said this, I met someone named Discontent, who would have gladly persuaded me to go back with him. His reasoning was that the valley was altogether without honor. He told me that if I went into the valley, and this is the valley of humiliation, I would be disobeying all my friends, such as pride, arrogance, self-conceit, worldly glory, and others he knew. He said that they would be very much offended if I made a fool of myself by wading through the valley of humiliation. It's easy to pass by this little bit of the story without giving it much thought. But if you have ever willingly walked through the valley of humiliation, if you've ever humbled yourself willingly, chosen to make yourself less than others, if you've ever lowered yourself below those around you, you will find that many people, including Christians, unfortunately, will criticize you and will try to dissuade you from doing this. They will point out how foolish it is not to fight for your rights and how you need to stand strong and prove yourself. And they will see no value in humbling yourself. And yet that is the path that the Lord of the way calls us to. When you look at it in light of this allegory that John Bunyan has set up, there's this path that we are walking, and it's straight and it's narrow, and the only way around the valley of humiliation is to leave the path and go around it. And I think sometimes when we see a path in front of us that involves humility, we want to find a way around it. That's a dangerous road to take. Then Faithful speaks about meeting a man named Shame, and he almost falls for Shame's argument, but then he realizes something. Listen to this. That which is highly esteemed among men is an abomination to God. And I love the follow-up to this. and I began to consider that shame was telling me what men were like, but nothing about what God or the Word is like. I want to give us a few talking points again this week, and here they are. There's just 2 this week. Think back to how Christian ran hard to meet up with Faithful. Why do you think that Christian tried so hard to catch up? Why do you think he passed him? And why do you think he fell? Don't skim over these, especially the first one. Why do you think that Christian tried so hard to catch up? And is that a good thing? And if it is, what does that mean for our lives? The next question is this, the talking point is, Faithful speaks of his realization when talking about shame. He says, that which is highly esteemed among men is an abomination to God. And that's an insightful statement. Are there things in your life which are highly esteemed by everyone around but are rejected by God? Oftentimes it's easy to run with things of this world because everyone does it or everyone thinks it's okay. And oftentimes when we struggle with a decision that is not okay with God, struggle with going in a direction that we really do know that God doesn't want, the justification either that we give or others give to us is simply this: I don't have a problem with it. Have you ever said that, or have you ever heard that? He's saying, is this the right thing to do? Oh, I don't have a problem with doing that kind of thing. And it seems to be the deciding factor. Consider your life and the things that you welcome into it, because just because it's well accepted to people doesn't mean it's well accepted to God. Just encourage you, keep reading with this and really ponder some of these matters. This is a deep book to really challenge us in our faith.